My name is Hannah Whitmore, and for 18 years, I was the person my family called when something broke. Not emotionally, financially. I was the one who quietly fixed things so no one else had to feel the weight of them. I never asked for credit. I never asked for thanks. I just showed up. And for a long time, I thought that was what love looked like. I want to tell you about the night that changed everything. The night I walked into a restaurant expecting to celebrate my parents' 35 years of marriage and found an empty chair, cleared plates, and a bill with my name already attached to it. The dining room at Magnolia House was warm and golden, candlelight flickering off crystal glasses, the smell of seared scallops and rosemary still hanging faintly in the air. I walked in 10 minutes early, smoothing my dress, genuinely excited for the first time in years to sit at that table. But there was no table waiting for me. There was no chair. Just my mother, Deborah, dabbing her lips with a napkin, glancing up at me like I'd interrupted something rather than arrived for it. "You're late," she said. "Cover the bill, would you? It's on the table." I stood there for a second, trying to process the sentence. Late for what? The plates in front of my father, Richard, and my sister, Madison, and her husband, Tyler, were already empty. Dessert forks rested at odd angles on nearly licked clean plates. My father, Richard, wouldn't meet my eyes. Welcome back to the family revenge tales. I didn't sit down right away. I picked up the receipt instead, and that's when I saw it. The timestamp. 7:02. The reservation had started almost 2 hours before I arrived. There had never been a place set for me. I hadn't been invited to celebrate anything. I'd been invited to pay for a celebration that was already over. Let me back up, because you need to understand how we got here. I was 16 when my father's furniture store, the one his own father had built, started to collapse. Big national chains moved in with lower prices and flashier showrooms, and within 2 years, Whitmore Furnishings was gone. I remember my parents sitting at the kitchen table with a shoebox of unpaid bills, my mother crying, my father silent in that particular way men get silent when they feel like they've failed everyone they love. I didn't decide to become the family's financial safety net. It just happened. I picked up a job at a diner. I learned how to read a collections notice. I started organizing the shoebox into folders, calling creditors, negotiating payment plans in a voice I had to fake being older to use. My parents never asked me to do it, but they never told me to stop either. And somewhere in there, helping became something that was simply expected of me. My mother, Deborah, has spent her whole life believing how things look matters more than how things actually are. She worked as a receptionist at a prestigious medical practice, and she took enormous pride in appearing successful even when we weren't. We kept a country club membership we couldn't afford. She sent elegant holiday cards with a photograph of a family that looked, on paper, like it had everything together. In our house, you could talk about almost anything except money. Money was the one subject that threatened the illusion, so money simply wasn't discussed. My younger sister, Madison, became the living proof of that illusion. She married Tyler, a finance guy with an easy smile and expensive taste, and together they built a life that looked like something out of a magazine. A beautiful house, a leased luxury SUV, vacations posted in soft, sun-drenched photos. My mother showed Madison off to everyone. Meanwhile, I was quietly building something real with my husband, Ethan, and nobody in my family paid much attention because what I was building didn't come with matching filters and captions. Here's what they didn't know. When my grandmother Evelyn passed away, she left me her little southern cafe, a small, worn-down place with good bones and decades of regulars who still remembered her biscuits. I could have sold it, Instead, Ethan and I poured every dollar we had into it. We worked 18-hour days. We learned the restaurant business from the inside out, mistake by mistake. Over the next 10 years, that one cafe became White Oak Hospitality, a group of successful restaurants across the state, including the very one I was standing in that night, Magnolia House, my restaurant. I never hid my success from my family. They simply never asked. So, when Madison texted me the invitation to my parents' 35th anniversary dinner, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Hope. I confirmed the time with her twice, just to be sure. I planned to surprise everyone that night. I was going to tell them the truth about what Ethan and I had built, and I was going to treat the entire family to the whole evening, my gift to them. For the first time in years, I let myself believe that this could be the night things finally changed between us. Instead, I was standing over an empty chair, holding a bill for $1,140, while my mother stared at me like I was being difficult for hesitating. "Mom," I said carefully, "the receipt says this started at 7. It's almost 9. She waved a hand. "We didn't want to make a fuss waiting around. You know how these things go." I looked at Tyler. He wouldn't look back at me. And in that moment, something clicked into place. The reservation time, the rush to finish before I got there, the seat that was never set. This wasn't an oversight. It was arranged. Tyler had planned the timing so I would arrive only after the meal was finished. So there would be no conversation, no questions, just a bill and an expectation. I set the receipt down. "Actually," I said, "let me get someone." My mother frowned. "Hannah, don't make a scene." I walked toward the host stand and asked for the manager. A moment later, Olivia, who had worked with me for 6 years, walked over with a warm, familiar smile. "Miss Whitmore," she said, "is everything all right? Would you like me to move this to the owner's account?" The table went silent. My mother's face shifted through confusion, then disbelief, then something that looked almost like fear. "Owner's account?" she repeated. "I own Magnolia House, Mom," I said quietly. "Ethan and I built White Oak Hospitality. This restaurant, 3 others. I wasn't going to tell you tonight like this. I was going to surprise you. I was going to pay for everything because I wanted to celebrate you." Nobody said anything for a long moment. My sister's mouth was slightly open. Tyler was staring at the tablecloth like it might offer him an escape route. And then I noticed something that mattered far more than any of their shocked expressions. My father's left hand was tucked under the table, half hidden beneath his napkin. I'd known that hand my entire life. I knew the wedding ring that had lived on it since before I was born. It wasn't there. "Dad," I said softly, "where's your ring?" He didn't answer. He just looked down at his lap, and I understood in that instant that whatever was happening in my family went far deeper than one uncomfortable dinner. I paid nothing that night. I let Olivia handle the bill quietly, and I left before anyone could turn the moment into a performance for me to apologize for. But the story didn't end there. Within days, my mother had rewritten it entirely. She told my aunts, my cousins, longtime family friends that I had gotten rich in secret and used the anniversary dinner to humiliate my own parents in public. Not one word about the empty chair, not one word about the bill with my name attached before I'd even walked in the door. Once again, I was the villain in a story I hadn't written. It was Madison who finally told me the truth, sitting across from me at the original cafe 2 weeks later, turning a coffee cup in her hands like it was the only thing keeping her steady. "Tyler lost his job 5 months ago," she said. "The firm restructured. He didn't tell me for 3 weeks because he was too ashamed. We just kept living like nothing changed. The SUV payment, the house, Emma's private school. I knew we couldn't keep it up, but every time I thought about cutting back, I thought about what people would think, what Mom would think." She looked up at me, eyes wet. The dinner was Tyler's idea. He thought if you paid quietly, like you always do, we'd have time to figure things out without anyone knowing. Like I always do, I repeated. I'm sorry, Hannah. I really am. A few days after that, my father came to see me alone. He sat across from me at the same small table where I used to do my grandmother's bookkeeping as a teenager, and he laid out a folder of documents with hands that trembled slightly. A home equity line of credit against the house, badly overdue. Withdrawals from his retirement account. Years of quietly bleeding money to keep up the country club dues my mother refused to cancel. To help cover Madison's lavish wedding. To patch the hole left by one of Tyler's failed investments. I pawned the ring 3 weeks ago, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper, just to make one payment. I didn't know what else to do. I sat there with the weight of that confession pressing on my chest. My father, a proud man who built furniture with his own hands for 30 years, had quietly dismantled his own dignity piece by piece to protect an image none of us actually needed. I could have fixed it that day. One wire transfer and the debt would have disappeared, the same way I'd made 100 smaller problems disappear over the years. But sitting there, looking at my father's empty ring finger, I understood something I'd never let myself see before. Every time I quietly rescued this family, I wasn't protecting them. I was protecting the pattern. Love that requires silence and invisibility isn't love. It's a debt that never gets marked paid. So instead of writing a check, I asked everyone to meet me at Magnolia House before opening hours at a table where, this time, every seat would be set before anyone arrived. I can help, I told them, once we were all seated, but not like this. Not in secret, not as a bailout that lets everything continue exactly as it was. I laid it all out. The HELOC, the retirement withdrawals, Tyler and Madison's debt. Every number that had been buried under years of careful appearances came out into the open air, and for the first time, nobody in my family could pretend it wasn't real. White Oak Hospitality will bring the loan current directly through the bank, but only if we do this honestly. Financial counseling for everyone. Madison and Tyler sell the SUV and downsize. No more secret rescues from me or anyone. And Dad, if you want it, I have a position for you at White Oak. Real work, real pay. My mother's face hardened. You want to turn our family's private business into some kind of intervention? I want us to stop pretending. That's all I've ever wanted. She told me if I insisted on airing our problems like this, I shouldn't bother coming for Christmas. I felt that sentence land somewhere deep and old in me, the part of me that spent 34 years trying to earn her approval. But for the first time in my life, I chose peace over performance, and I let her have her silence. The months after that were not easy, but they were honest. Madison and Tyler sold the SUV and moved into a smaller home 2 streets from mine. They started therapy, together and separately, and slowly began climbing out from under the debt they'd buried themselves in. My father started coming into the cafe 3 mornings a week, and something in him seemed to wake back up when the old regulars recognized him, when they told him stories about furniture he built for them decades earlier. 6 months later, he walked into a pawn shop and bought his wedding ring back with money he'd earned himself. And when he slid it back onto his finger, he cried in a way I'd never seen him cry before. At the fall festival that October, I watched my father introduce me to an old friend from his furniture days. He didn't say, "This is my daughter who paid off our house." He said, "This is my daughter who saved our family." And I realized that sentence meant more to me than any amount of money ever could. That evening, we all gathered at the original cafe, the one with my grandmother's worn wooden cables and the smell of her recipes still somehow living in the walls. Every chair was set before anyone walked through the door. My mother came in quietly, without any of her usual performance, and sat down across from me. She didn't give some big, dramatic apology. That's not who she is, and I've made peace with that. But she looked at me, really looked at me, and said 4 words I had waited my entire life to hear. "I'm proud of you." It wasn't a grand moment. There were no violins, no perfect resolution wrapped in a bow, but it was real, and real was worth more to me than anything performed ever could be. I used to believe that love meant making yourself smaller so everyone else could feel comfortable. I believed that helping in silence was the purest form of care. I know now that real love, the kind that actually holds a family together, isn't measured by what you're willing to sacrifice quietly. It's measured by honesty, by accountability, by making sure everyone has a place at the table before the meal ever begins. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own family, your own quiet sacrifices, or the moment you finally chose honesty over approval, I'd love for you to subscribe to the Family Revenge Tales. We tell these stories because so many of you are living them, and you deserve to know you're not alone. Wherever you are tonight, remember this: setting a boundary isn't betrayal, and telling the truth isn't cruelty. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for the people around you is to stop protecting them from reality and start inviting them into it. What is the significant educational or other value in this story? At its heart, this story is about the difference between enabling and love. It shows how family patterns rooted in secrecy and image management can quietly harm everyone involved, including the person who appears to be thriving on the outside. It teaches that financial dishonesty and the pressure to maintain appearances can lead entire families into cycles of debt, shame, and resentment, and that breaking those cycles requires uncomfortable honesty rather than more silence. It also offers a meaningful lesson about self-worth, that a person's value in their family should never be reduced to what they can financially provide, and that real respect has to be earned through truthfulness, not purchased through quiet sacrifice. Finally, it models a healthier way forward, showing that setting boundaries, insisting on transparency, and offering help with accountability attached can lead to genuine healing rather than the temporary relief of another hidden bailout.